And we are live. It's Tuesday, September 1st.
Cool.
Shh. We're live. I want to thank you so much for coming in this morning. And we have a quorum. We're joined by Councilmember Joe Buscaino and Mitchell Farrell. Good morning. Thank you for being here as well. We only have one card for general public comment, so we're going to go ahead and open it up for general public comment. Before we do that, are there any other members here, anybody from the audience who wish to speak to general public comment that haven't yet filled in a card for general public comment? Not on this specific item, but general public comment? Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it in. Want to make sure all cards are in on general public comment. Seeing no other cards. Anybody else? Any hands? None. So we have two cards for general public comment. Okay. If you're here for general public comment and you haven't yet turned in a card, I don't see any other hands or anybody walking up. Wayne, I've got your card. Call on you in a minute. So we'll go ahead and open it up for a minute for you as well. And Wayne, you can come up as well. And we'll close general public comment submission for cards. And we only have two members, so we'll go ahead and have you to speak.
Herman's coming, so he wants to.
Nobody else is here, so we're closing submission to general public comment unless the other cards and they're already here. Yeah. It is 8:38, so okay. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Ruth Sarnoff, and I'm particularly interested in speaking to you today about the need for respect for health needs of people. The international code that is respected by the UN and countries all over the country call for respect for a place to rest. It calls for availability of water. It calls for a whole number of things that you should become more acquainted with. I got called unexpectedly. I will leave you a copy of the International Declaration of Human Rights. It's many years old and should be looked at as a historical document on the concern of people for human rights.
Thank you very much. Wayne?
Yes, too many officers on the road and traffic ticket and speed traps, especially in the valley, over on Reseda Boulevard off of the Nordoff Street, which is in CD 12. Elf! And we have to stop that kind of thing because the vehicle code bans speed traps, which is essentially cops sitting on their ass and stopping there for the purposes of writing tickets and raising revenue. California legislature made that law because we want our officers out fighting traffic problems and serving the public and stopping crime, not sitting on their ass trying to catch people 5 miles over a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. So you need to stop using police officers as revenue agents and start putting them out in the field. Finally, get them out of City Hall, all these sergeants, put them in the field, deploy them.
Great, thank you. Stay right there for a sec, Wayne. You've got, Wayne, have a seat. We've got your cards that we're going to take first. So before we do that, colleagues, let's go ahead.
That's discriminatory.
Hold on a second. Before we do that, let's go ahead and look at items for possible receive and file, except for the fact that they may have been called special by, I'd say special by cards, but we'll just call them now special by Wayne. I think we're going to rename that.
Really?
The rules here? Yeah, I'll just call them special by Wayne.
Yeah.
So with that, we've got possible consideration for consent items are actually in the effort to clean up the 14-15 files. 2 through 19 is what I'd like to call consent. And those are all received and file.
Move it. No objection.
Okay. So with that, though, we do have cards on each one of those items. So Wayne, so for 2 through 19, before we do that, we're going to take those together. Is there anybody here for cards for 2 through 19? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close submission of cards for those items since we have opened them and closed them. So if they're not in, then Wade, You have cards on every one of them, so we're going to go ahead and open the clock now for you for 5 minutes.
Well, I would insist that you read each of the items into the record before I speak on them.
Feel free to do it. You can do that. It's
No,
all
I
written.
want you to do it.
It's not part of the
Under the
rules.
city charter, you're required to
Start
do
the
it.
clock, please.
Oh, Mitchell's so upset.
You're going to stay on the item, and you're not going to disrupt this meeting if you're not on one of the specific items, and you'll read which item you're going to actually speak to before you speak to that item, so we know you're on the agenda item that you fill out a card.
Board of Police Commissioners and the Big Baby won a $393 grant award. So now they want to, and I have a card on item number 1. So number 2, no. Number 3, a strategic plan to manage the sworn overtime bank. There's no way to manage an overtime bank. Overtime is the way you steal enough money to buy a rental house. Number 4, the district attorney. The LAPD, you don't want to mess with the district attorney because you can't pay off Jackie Lacey that easily. So take on item 4, the district attorney, and slash that out of there, and just coordinate between Mike Fuhrer. Oh, the court system, I wouldn't manage the court system because the court system, you can't pay off all the judges. Lately, I've heard rumors that the judges are no longer taking payoffs on Hill Street. So item 4, no. Item 5, the benefits of hiring fewer officers? Why, you need more police, especially speed traps in Mitchell Englander's district. They need to raise more tickets. No on 5. 6, should we do more policing versus more police? Why, my God. I mean, Shakespeare couldn't have wrote a more poetic verse. Should we police versus having more police? Should we do more policing and have less police, or should we have more police and do less policing? I think we should have more police and spend less time policing. That would be good. And then we have number 7. Number 7's a Valley Traffic. That's in Nuri's district. Nuri Martinez isn't here. Shame on you, Nuri. You're writing too many tickets in Van Nuys Boulevard. No. Number 8. 20% reduction in salaries for new hires. That's racial discrimination because most of the new police officers are not white. They're Asian and Latino. When you go to the police commission, and by the way, if you go to the police commission, I recommend you wear a hood. It's because it's a Klan meeting, actually, disguised as a police commission meeting. You're going to, 20% of the new cops, you get 20% less pay because you're a Latino, but the old pasty-ass white cops, they get 20% more. That's racial discrimination. But we have a racist here on the panel that's chairing this committee. So I ask you, Joe Blow, for the Italians, please vote no on number 8. Make pay equal for everybody. Then investments. The stock market's down 320 points this morning. Please don't invest any of the money in the stock market. Do what I do. Put it in CDs and earn 0.1% because in 200...
On the agenda item.
Yeah, I am, but in 200 fucking years, I'll be able to make enough money to buy a truck. So then we have 10, 11, 12, number 11, 1877, ask LAPD. Well, I've dialed that phone number before, and it goes, welcome to the Los Angeles Police Department. If this is an emergency, dial 911. Please stay on the line for hearing impaired assistance. Please stay on the line for the next available operator. Hello, this is the Los Angeles Police Department, non-emergency number. If this is an emergency, please dial 911. Please stay on the line for the next available operator. Please stay on the line for the next available operator. If this is an emergency, please dial 911. In other words, you never get the fuck through on 877 Ask LAPD. You'll be dead by the time a cop ever talks to you, especially in the San Fernando Valley. Then we have all kinds of other things. We have the LAPD gun unit. No more guns. We have too many guns. No more guns. Everybody that has a gun right now, that's it. No more buying guns for 5 years. Take all the guns away from the police. Give them bobby sticks, and we'll call them bobbies, like in England. Ta-da!
Great, thank you very much. All right. So, Wayne, you're out of time for the rest of the committee. And now we're going to go ahead and take up, again, items 2 through 19. 1 is actually to approve the grant, and 3 through 19 will be then to receive and file. Seeing no objections, that'll be the order. Okay, great, excellent, thank you so much. The next items we have are items, and let's go through the agenda if we could very quickly. Items 1, we have special for cards as well, so we have 2 cards on items 1. So we're going to take item 1 next and then speaker cards first. Before we do that, then to hear items, we have items 20, 21, 22, and 23. So 20 through 23, we're going to hear those items. And we don't have any cards. So let me just ask now, does anybody here wish to speak? Do we have cards in on any of those items? We do not. Okay. So then we'll go ahead and we'll take up 20, 21, 22, and 23 together. We don't have any cards on those. We do have a card on item 1. And so with that, we're going to go to public comment on item 1. Ruth, if you want to come up first. And then followed by Hamid. And if you want to come on up as well and have a seat. 2 minutes for each.
My name is Ruth Sarnoff. I'm particularly concerned about the process by which commissioners are both chosen, the conditions under which they are chosen, the fact that the people, the vast majority of people, the 4 million people who live in Los Angeles, really don't have a voice in who will serve on this committee. It's obviously an important committee. It functions at the pleasure of the mayor. I think you're all asked to sign a resignation in advance of becoming a commissioner, and as such, it means that you know that you really, really, really know that you're serving at the pleasure of the mayor. It makes it easy to dismiss any or all of you. We think, and I think, I can only speak for myself, I shouldn't speak for others, I think that the need to change the way in which this committee functions and to really, it's to your advantage to do so, because the amount of conflict and distrust and anger is growing, not lessening right now, and the needs of the people of the city are growing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hamid Khan with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I just wanted to echo what the other speaker has just said. I think the appointments at the Police Commission, and for that matter, any commission, are extremely, extremely critical, because these are the representatives of the people, and they're supposed to be the custodians of public trust. But unfortunately, what remains missing is the public. in this conversation and in this debate. The way our political system is set up, that of course, like you all are elected representatives of the people, but the commission appointments are basically political appointments which are at the pleasure of the mayor. It's not about the person, it's about the process. And given the political moment, given the heat on the street, given that what is going on, I mean, not that one commission is important than the other, but the police commission, absolutely, it is an extremely, extremely critical commission. So I think the conversation needs to be much bigger than that. There has to be a dialogue. It just can't be the mayor just saying that here's my appointment and just pass through, and typically that's what's happened. I mean, you all are familiar as to, what is going on. You all are familiar with the frustration that the people are showing. You all are familiar that how people continue to be silenced and stonewalled, and there is nobody there that is listening to the people. It limits us to completely a 2-minute public comment, and then we are expected to just explain and share, the profound impact on the communities, and basically it fosters more distrust in the system. So we really we demand that, you as a representative of the people, as the elected representatives, need to do something about this process, need to thoroughly unpack this process and examine it and see how the people can be represented in a better way. So I just wanted to say that, and just want to end by saying that, just not going too much off subject about the drone piece, I don't know if you're familiar.
Way off subject. It's on the agenda.
700 close calls have happened.
Not on the subject.
I just wanted to throw in there. Yeah, no, I know
that. You know.
But please, just this process needs to be really, really analyzed and examined.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Seeing no other public comment cards, we'll close the general public comment on item 1 and bring up our new commissioner, our soon-to-be. But before we do that, and I want to address what both Ruth said and many of others have said, this is by far one of the most important appointments and commissions that we could ever make. It's by far one of the most important commissions that oversees not just the well-being of the city of Los Angeles and the public safety for the city of Los Angeles, but the men and women of the police department, as well as the perception of policies, the implementation of those policies, the decision-making as we're all going through these new technology phases and different things that are happening on a daily basis, and knee-jerk, oftentimes, reaction to what's happening in the press or what's happening in other locations, as we've seen just in the last 18 months of sort of what's exploded in really the public perception of policing as well, yet just another wave of what's happening. And so this appointment is critically important. On top of that, I would add and stress that it very much is a political appointment, and oftentimes it's not about the person but the process. But before he comes up, I will tell you I've had the opportunity to sit down with him. I've had the opportunity to do my own extensive research, and no matter what process we could ever come up with, it's rare, I think, that we find an individual that we have found for this commission that actually would meet all the criteria with what we would hope to find as a transparent, honest, ethical, and we look at this as a citizen body, person who represents so many different communities and has done so much with his own personal and professional life. It's extensive that no matter what process we came up with, I think it's rare that we find somebody like this, quite frankly, colleagues, that meets all this criteria. And we've had the opportunity to sit down, and with that, I welcome, and it's my honor to bring up Mr. Johnson, if you can please have a seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a soft introduction.
I appreciate the kind.
Absolutely. Excuse me for 1 second. Wayne, if you yell out one more time, laugh out loud, or try to interrupt this meeting, you're going to be asked to leave. That will be your final warning. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
It is a pleasure to see you all today. I appreciate the mayor's confidence in me, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve the city in this very important role. I agree with you. This is there's really no greater responsibility on a citizen commission than this. You've all seen my biography, and some of you know me, so you know my work with the Boys and Girls Clubs over the years, the Urban League, and many other nonprofit organizations. My commitment to social justice has been longstanding and unwavering. As you know, especially you, Councilmember Bonin, I served on the Board of Airport Commissioners for the past 2 years. I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish there while I was on the board, but I can think of no more important commission than the Police Commission, especially at this moment in time. In these moments, we need to take extra care to ensure that the bonds of trust between the community and the police are restored and strengthened. Safe and prosperous communities rely on the work of an effective police department. Police work is incredibly difficult and often dangerous, and the vast majority of LAPD officers perform their job in a lawful manner with respect to the communities that they serve. Our job is not just to make sure that crime is reduced, or that when force is used, that it is legal. Our job is to make sure that our officers have the best training, have the best tactics, and the best equipment to keep our communities safe while minimizing the use of force and respecting rights. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues before I ask my own questions. Mitchell Farrell.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm always grateful when someone so accomplished and talented and has so much to offer at your level is willing to volunteer for such a tough challenge. So I am grateful for your service on the Airport Commission and now stepping up to be on the Police Commission. What are some of your thoughts in dealing with the spike in crime, the overall increase in crime? What are some of your thoughts in relation to that?
Sure. It seems to be a national trend, not just a trend that's in the city of Los Angeles. When you look at the last 10, 15 years, crime rates have been dropping dramatically, really all across the country, and the city of Los Angeles has done particularly well. We certainly need to make sure that this is just an aberration and not a new trend of increasing crime. So I think there are a number of things that we need to look at. It's proven that community policing and relationship policing not only reduces crime, but it also increases trust in communities, so we need to double down on those efforts. We also need to look at everything from our training and tactics to and how we're deploying our officers across the city. We have a great stat model with respect to mapping crime. So we have to look at all of those issues.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about the body cameras that were rolled out in the Valley yesterday?
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about it. I think it's absolutely transformational. I think we should be proud as a city that we are at the forefront of major cities rolling out the dash cams and the body cams. I think it will change behavior both with respect to citizens and police officers. I don't see how it won't. The early evidence shows that it has a profound impact on everything from reducing incidents between officers and citizens to reducing the number of lawsuits, and it creates a different environment. So I'm incredibly excited about it. At the same time, I do think we have to understand that this is new ground that we're entering into. There's a lot of active debate around the policies and procedures about the use of the video, et cetera. I think I'm relatively new to this, so it's only been a couple of months that I've really been diving in. I've done a lot of reading. I've spoken to a lot of people, including Councilmember Englander, who I know has spent a lot of energy around this issue. I think that our policy as it exists today is the right one, but I also think we have to keep an open mind and look at it and evaluate it over the next 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years, and see how it's actually working in practice.
And lastly, your resume speaks for itself. As I mentioned, you're very accomplished. And what unique perspective or life experience do you feel that you personally offer this body?
Well, going back to life experience, I grew up I'm the son of a fireman. I grew up in central New Jersey. Most of my dad's friends were firemen and police officers. So I looked at police officers in one way, it was my dad's friend Joe, or
Excuse me for 1 second. Mr. Herman, you've actually interrupted this meeting twice since you've walked in by blasting the door open, talking in the back, and then speaking up at the ropes here where there's no need to do that. You know how the process works, submit the cards. I'm going to give you that fair and final warning, since you were warned every single one of these meetings and you know the rules. If you disrupt this meeting again, you're going to be asked to leave. Thank you. Okay, please continue.
Sure. My relationship with police officers was, I knew them as just regular people. At the same time, I went to school in a highly segregated town, and it was very common to be stopped by the police officers in that town just for being black. And my friends, we all encountered that multiple times. So I understand what it's like to be young and black and experience interactions with police officers in that way, where you're just a student on your way doing nothing wrong at all and being treated like a criminal. I have been in the city of Los Angeles since 1992. I moved out here shortly after the riots. My work with the Boys and Girls Club in particular has given me great access to all parts of the city. I was president of the board in Echo Park. I was president of the board of Challengers, which is in South Central. Both two very different communities. Echo Park was largely Hispanic and Filipino. South Central was largely black. Both neighborhoods that were troubled with a lot of gang violence. I got to know parents and kids in those communities very well. I'm now a national trustee. I'm focused on the 28 clubs in the city of LA. So we're talking about 28 clubs all over the entire city. So I haven't been to all of those clubs. I've been to many of them, but I certainly interact with the presidents of the boards and all of those different organizations. Each one has its own president. Also, obviously, through the Urban League and other organizations, I just have a wide sort of cross-section of people that I interact with on a regular basis.
Terrific. Well, I, for one, am very excited and wholeheartedly support your appointment, so thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your continued service to our city. I'm sure Mr. Bonin will attest to what you've done at the Board of Airport Commission and leading the infrastructure changes there. Amazing work, and thank you for your service on the Board of Airport Commission. You know, our core values in the LAPD: service to others, reverence for the law, respect for others, integrity in all we say and do, quality through continuous improvement. These are all the core values of the LAPD that I feel that you embody, and this is a solid appointment, a solid recommendation from the mayor. Also, our mission statement is to reduce the incidence and fear of crime. How do you plan on implementing our mission statement within the LAPD?
Mm-hmm. I think all of these things are really closely tied together. I mean, clearly, everybody wants an effective police department, and that is, I think, society, the single most important thing that government owes to its citizen is keeping its citizens safe. And now on a federal level, that's from international threats. On a local level, that's from crime and other issues. When I look at areas that have shown, you know, particularly when you look at where LA was pre-consent decree, where we really had a militarized police department, and we had very high crime rates. We had I think 1992, the murder rate was like 1,100 people in the city of Los Angeles. When you look at what has been effective, when we really changed the character of the department and went to more of a relationship-based policing model, a community-based policing model, I don't think that that's a coincidence that we saw a dramatic drop in crime. So I think that we really need to constantly, and you know, communities change, the needs of people change. So it's an evolving process. So you can't just say, okay, well, we have the program, this works, we're done, let's move on to the next thing. I think you have to constantly be evaluating it and changing it. And I think that there has been positive evolution. You see the programs that we have going on now that are in housing projects. I love that program. And I think, you know, like those types of programs, you need to expand. Right. Obviously, LA is challenged because we have a huge geographic area that the police department has to cover. We have a very broad diversity in terms of our citizenship. Much more diverse. I mean, I think people think that New York is a more diverse city. LA is the most diverse city. And we have fewer officers per capita than a lot of these other cities. So it's a real challenge. We can't just we can't throw bodies at all of these different problems. So we have to be, it just means we have to be smarter, more creative about how we approach things. So I'm hoping that I can bring, fresh perspective on things, and I know I don't know far more than I know at this point. And I really look forward to digging in and hopefully offering a fresh perspective.
And you're right. You're absolutely right on the overall crime reduction and the strategies in place over the course of the last 10 years. We think we owe that success not only to the hard work of the men and women of the LAPD, which we can never forget, but also the community who have stepped up, and that trust that we've really brought back between the community and the police department. Give me your thoughts. Just yesterday I met with our area commanding officer down the harbor area, along with the assistant commanding officer of South Bureau, Commander Tingrides and Captain Meek. I'm trying to call for more resources, higher deployment of numbers of officers that have been taken away from the harbor area to higher crime areas. Mm-hmm. And I'm calling for Captain Meek to be more creative and put more strategies in place. But at the same time, I understand her frustration as well. You're looking at redeployment of officers to higher crime areas. For us, we in the harbor area, we're not leaving the city in homicides.
Right.
But violent crime, the quality of life crimes for us is just as equally important as violent crimes in the harbor area. How do you bring that perspective? How do you balance that out? How do you plan on balancing out those haves and needs, as we call it in police work?
And you can address that to the Valley as well.
Yeah.
And I live in the Valley, so it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because it's something that I have put on my agenda as something I want to personally look at and be educated about. And I live in Sherman Oaks. I've been in my same house for 7 years. I have literally never seen a police officer on my street, not once in 7 years. I am frequently in South LA. I see police officers all the time there. Yep. And I also am on, the various, neighborhood commissions, so I get the reports of crime in the neighborhood. It's not like we live in a crime-free zone in the Valley. There is crime. Are there murders and rapes at the rate that there are in other areas of the city? No, not at all. So I understand that it's a complicated balance of how you deploy resources, and frankly, I don't feel qualified at all to opine on it at all at this point. But it is definitely something I want to look into, because we do have an obligation to make sure that all of our communities feel safe and secure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. I move that we approve this recommendation from the mayor.
Great. And let me just, before I turn it over to Mike Bonin real quick, just on that thought, and I want to plant this seed as you start looking at this and these issues. I've seen less and less patrol in black and whites, certainly in my district, and yet those property crimes, quality of life crimes, and you call them quality of life crime. Quality of life crimes, a property crime, can easily turn into, and often does, possible assault, rape, or murder. Somebody breaks into a home to burglarize that home and doesn't realize the person's home. Things change at a moment's notice. Somebody gets home and there's somebody in the home. That type of crime often can and will change as well. And so it's not just, they're just breaking into vehicles, they're just breaking into homes. It's really a victimless crime. That's absolutely not true, and can often turn into something at a moment's notice and escalate to a totally different type of crime, period. And with that, I'd like to plant the seed that what we've seen over the last decade is a decimation of the department's civilian workforce. While we've maintained pretty much the numbers that we need to and sworn, they're doing a lot more desk work than ever. I firmly believe we're completely understaffed in our sworn as well, per capita, with what we need to do geographically and the challenges we have and face, and would never suggest that we stop hiring sworn. We need to keep up with a minimum of attrition, and we have this sort of number that I'm not going to go back and forth with how many sworn we need and how many should be on patrol, and the bottom line is this, and I've said this from the beginning, and I'll continue to say this. For every sworn officer we've got, we have to have so many civilian staff to support that officer. And there's not a magic number yet. There's one that's talked about, but that number keeps changing. And quite frankly, if you talk to a lot of the officers, either A, they're not trained and don't know how to do a lot of the civilian staff work. That's expertise work that needs to be done. They're not trained to do it, they don't want to do it, and it takes them out of their function of what they should be doing, and it's not the best and the most cost-effective approach for the city, and it's costing us a lot more money in the long run. And so I'd love for somebody on the commission to finally start focusing on that and push forward on hiring on the other part is looking at our backlog. We had a backlog for many reasons on the DNA rape kits. Thank God. Thank God we've created that as a top priority and has caught that up. But now we have this tremendous backlog on with SID on printing, and we've now limited the number of how many prints each division can take, and it's ridiculously a low number. And these crimes, while they're going up, we don't have then the detective analysis and work that the detectives needs to support solving some of these because we don't have the civilian staff in SID to take the print. So we've got to create this balance, and it's probably one of the most important things moving forward in the department that I think we should focus on. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I wanted to come up with a solution for you to focus on, and before I turn it over to Councilmember Mike
Just
Bonner.
a quick comment on that point. One of the things that I noticed in the early research I've been able to do that really surprised me was the number of officers that we have in the field at any one time.
Yes.
And I think there's been, to your point, there's been a tremendous amount of focus on getting 10,000 sworn officers, where I think we have to also focus equally on how many officers are in the field at any one time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you. And I think given your, well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Bonner, and then I'll close with some questions.
First of all, amen. What you just said about focusing on the number of the officers in the field as opposed to the numbers of officers on the payroll, that is absolutely central. And I don't think we've had that discussion enough. And I'd encourage you to really drill down on that and try to get some metrics from the department. I have found asking that question to be incredibly elusive over the past couple of years, and I hope that your attention can do that. First of all, thank you for your service on BOAC for the past couple of years. You have done a tremendous service. BOAC's loss will be big, but it'll be a huge gain for the Police Commission, and I really want to thank you for stepping up. When you joined the Airport Commission, I think my line of questioning was largely about neighborhoods for obvious reasons, given that I represent the neighborhoods around the airport. I wanted to put the same focus on neighborhoods in this position as well. My colleagues have all sort of rung the same bell I wanted to ring about an alarm between the lack of forces on patrol. I've actually been complaining about this for 2 years in my district. When the numbers came out about the crime spike, my district saw dramatic, enormous increases in crime. For some reason, that's not, there were two parts of the city that had really significant increases. The press focused on another part of the city, but the increases in my part of the district have been bad. And while I have been calling for 2 years for an increase in patrol, we're actually now seeing a reduction. And I actually think that the strategy that the chief is using right now is counterproductive. I think taking out of patrol to put into Metro is going back to an attitude of suppression instead of community policing. And that's one of the things you identified as helping change the department. And I'm getting very concerned about this, and I'd ask that you put some attention and focus on that, particularly because it speaks to what you identified as being one of the things that was strong about changing the nature of LAPD's relationship with the community. Along with that, I keep hearing complaints from my constituents that they can't get through to LAPD, that they have to call 911 or they can't get through, that the 877 number, they half the time they're on hold for 20 minutes, they call the station, nobody answers, and we have to get past that. And that, I think, speaks largely probably to Mr. Englander's point about hiring proper civilian staffing, because it just doesn't work. Folks don't feel like, and sometimes folks don't feel like they have a police department in parts of my district. So that's my speech part. The question I wanted to ask you was, you talked about the way LAPD's relationship with the community has changed for the better over the years, largely based on community policing. The department's reputation in the community got so much better, and things had changed so much over the past few years. And over the past year in particular, that seems to have taken some pretty significant blows. Lots of tensions with Black Lives Matter and a number of others. And I think they speak for more than just their activist organizations. Do you have a sense yet, and I know it's early because you haven't begun to serve yet, on what, if anything, in the department needs to change in order to address those concerns and rebuild the relationship?
Well, first of all, I think you have to look at the causes, right? And we're in a moment where people aren't living just locally. They're highly influenced by what's going on in the rest of the country. So in my mind, this really didn't all start with respect to Ferguson. It really goes back to Trayvon Martin. Mm-hmm. So where you had a young black male not doing anything wrong who ends up dead for no reason. All of these incidents, whether it's Ferguson, Staten Island, Baltimore, Ohio, they start to feed a narrative. And so when things happen, wherever they happen, they take on a great significance. And that's not to say that there aren't significant issues. There are real issues, and we've had our instances here. And I think you also have to bear in mind that while we have done great work over the past 10 years, it's undoing hundreds of years of damage. Yeah. So things don't happen overnight. And in any relationship, it takes a long time to build up trust. It takes an instant to damage it. Yep. So we have to be hyper vigilant about that. And there are no silver bullets or no quick fixes. And while there is hard work has been done, which has created some great relationships that create. There is mutual respect. There is the opportunity for open and honest dialogue, but nothing speaks louder than actions, right? So when you go back to the points I was making earlier about the importance of community policing, the community needs to see the officers. They need to be interacting with the officers in that way. I really think that with an increased focus on training, anti-bias training, de-escalation training, dealing with the mentally ill, we can really start to have an impact on the number of use of force incidents. When you start to decrease the number of use of force incidents, there's less opportunity for things to go wrong and for less opportunity for people to be focused on. So those are the things that I think we need to be focused on. There's one other area that I have recently learned that I think we need to take a hard look at. All of our officers are not equipped with tasers, and all of our squad cars do not have beanbag shotguns. And I think we need to equip our officers with tools that are less than lethal uses of force. Because if we can deal with someone with that, in a way that's not shooting them with a gun but tasing them, that's a much better result for everyone. So I think there's a lot of things that we can and will and should do.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer. I look forward to you working on those issues in particular, and I'm very enthusiastic to support your nomination.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think it was a great line of questioning. As you can see, we're all very engaged in this. Your appointment to this is probably one of the most important that will ever come through this committee, and certainly the City Council. It impacts all of us every single day, and it's the most important thing we do in government, and local government particularly, is public safety, bar none. We have a phenomenal system of a check and balance with the Citizen Oversight Commission that you're about to be appointed to, and you can all hear we have very serious concerns in what's happening, not just citywide, but also specifically in our communities. There's been a number of issues that, and as Councilmember Mike Bonin has said, the last couple years he's brought this up. I want to say it's fallen on deaf ears, because we all have, and we've gotten very little, if any, response from either department very specific commissioners, and very little response. It has not been a priority in the budget, and those are things we have to focus on and look at. And so knowing the conversations we've had, knowing your background experience, your passions, I think that you'll be a key person on this commission that'll focus on just that. What's great about this commission, and there's been many that bring a lot to the table, and hopefully the focus on that community policing part, but also on the needs of the different issues we're dealing with, and particularly the imbalance of staffing is really one of the biggest issues. I mean, getting everybody out of their police cars and shaking hands and kissing babies is really important, and I'm not minimizing that whatsoever. But if they're doing it in one community and not another, it doesn't work. And we just don't have the bodies to do it. And they're doing too many other things. And I will tell you, the complaint that we've gotten for so long, for too long, and it's growing more and more, is quite frankly the service of not answering the phones, of, we're trying to push everybody for unrelated immediate crime to call the front desk, to call 877 Ask LAPD. To get no response is insane. And it's uncalled for, and it's unprofessional. And it should be one of the most important functions we do. I've been pushing for 2 years now to put online police reporting so people can fill out police reports online, less than serious police reports, which virtually almost every other department now allows, including our own university police. CSUN, if you have an issue, somebody breaks into your car and you don't want to go down and you got your cell phone stolen, you have to fill out a police report. You don't want to take the time away from school or out of your job, perhaps watching your kids, to go down to a police station and sit there for 3 hours and fill out a police report when you can do it right online at home, which everybody else allows. We're finally getting that off the ground. I believe it's supposed to launch, we're told for the last 2 years, any day. So any day. But those are the basics, things we should be doing to think outside the box. It's about customer service, not just customer friendliness. So these are the things that are really important. I had a call a couple weeks ago that a woman, her home was burglarized and completely ransacked and destroyed. The worst part for her was not only that and being victimized, but she had to go pick up her kids from day camp, her little ones. And she had to pay. She was paying now 2 hours already on overtime at day camp because they were the last 2 kids waiting for mommy to pick them up, because she was waiting 5 hours for a black and white to show up to take a report. 5 hours. I said, why didn't you call me 4.5 hours ago? And I had to call and get a black and white there. That's crazy. 5 hours. So these are things we're dealing with as well. With that, welcome. Yeah.
I have a neighborhood council in this coastal part of San Pedro who's fed up because they're not seeing boots on the ground, and God bless our LAPD officers out the harbor. They're working their asses off. But yet, they're to the point now that they're initiating volunteer patrols.
Really?
They're going to get in their own cars. The neighborhood council is going to put up a magnet on their cars, volunteer patrol. We're going to ham operators with their radio.
We're launching that right now in the Valley with VST, and we're getting our own cars with strobes and lights to do hide type
That's
projects
community,
as well. Community policing
at its
VST.
finest.
Yeah. We're actually taking it all over. The citizens are getting involved on their own, and because we don't have the cops, and so that's what we're doing as well. So, which is...
We need to change that.
Yeah, I think so.
You still want to do this, right?
Yeah. Anyway, with that, we actually had a good caper the other day with VST and a great arrest that they made. But I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but I do want to give a shout out to our volunteer surveillance team that did a phenomenal job in apprehending a suspect the other day. That was phenomenal. But in any event, thank you so much. I know you're not scheduled in council today. I believe
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, and appreciate you coming in, and look forward to the continued dialogue. And anytime you want to come back and report to this committee, you have an open, standing invitation to come share some of the things and ideas that you're working on, certainly off record and individually as well, which is really important, but certainly on the record to come in and brief the entire committee on behalf of the commission. We welcome all the commissioners to do that.
Great, I look forward to that.
Great, congratulations. So
Thank
your appointment is confirmed by this committee unanimously and without objection.
Without objection.
Uh,
Congrats.
Great. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Is this going to council today?
Going to council tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much. With that, I believe we have items 20 through 23. And we're going to go ahead. We didn't have any cards on those. I called every item special first by cards, asked if there were cards presented on any of those at the time, because I wanted the public who was ever here to drive in early this morning to make it here for committee to have the opportunity to speak before staff. And there were none. We already had satisfied, again, general public comment as well as all the items that went on consent and took those special for cards as well. Just wanted the record to reflect that again before we dive into the next section on the agenda. We are now again on item 20. Let's go ahead and we've got staff here to report, and this was relative to instructing the Los Angeles Police Department to report on the number of hit and runs dating back to 2005. A lot of the issues, things that we were looking at, didn't go back to 2005, and so we wanted to have some historical perspective on where things have grown and changed since this has turned into what we've been now labeled as an epidemic. Good morning.
Good morning. Captain Phil Fontanet. I'm Commanding Officer, Emergency Operations Division for LAPD. And under the Emergency Operations, I have Traffic Coordination Section. With me today is Detective Scott Walton, and he's part of the Major Collision Investigation Team. So we received a request to report back from 2005 the total number of hit and runs. Have you received that report back?
No.
From 2005, we cataloged 25,868 hit and runs. Looking at 2014, we cataloged 22,383. So between 2005 and 2014, it fluctuates, and I'll just read them off so you can get an idea of how.
And do you have a copy that you're going to submit?
I only have this. The copy should have been sent, and it should be working its way through the system.
Let's do this. It wasn't sent. We didn't receive it. I don't believe it's been posted on the council file. I'm going to hold this. This is too important. I think we need to review it and ask some questions. I'm going to hold it till the next committee meeting. We can go ahead and ask questions now, though, if we'd like to, and if you want to go ahead and read through it. But I will hold it on the desk. I want to let you know because it's something that we're certainly focused on. But
So once again, for 2005, we're looking at 25,868. 2006, 26,080. 2007, 26,152. 2008, 23,599. 2009, 21,573. 2010, 19,726, and remarkably for 2011, 19,753. Then we bump up on 2012 to 20,882, 2013, 21,473, and as I just mentioned, 2014 was 22,383. For 2015, ending at the end of May, we recorded 10,235. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what types of hit and runs these were. And as you know, we take reports when a person wakes up and gets to their vehicle that's parked on the street and their side view mirror has been damaged and it appears that it's a collision. We will take that hit and run report. And as you all are well aware, we take hit and run reports for the major collisions. That's
do we have them broken down in a couple of different manners? Do we have them broken down into those with injuries, serious bodily injuries or death? Do we have a breakdown of just property only? Do we have a breakdown of geographic locations over those periods of time?
We do have, yes, we do have the geographic locations as far as the A and the K and the types of injuries.
Correct.
Not going back from 25.
Going back to any period of time?
I believe we can go back. How far can we go back for the A and Ks, just for the year?
2013.
2013 to just Ks?
Yeah. Yeah, because the CompStat system, I'm sure you're aware of, wasn't really adopted by the traffic divisions until about 2 years ago.
Right.
So that's when we started really breaking down our numbers into categories. Prior to that, it was just a general.
Sure, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think it's important to see and look at as much data as possible, and particularly as we also look at how many have been solved over those same periods of time. And if we're not capturing what data, we can look at what data we're looking at and what data we're capturing versus what we should or may be able to capture. We can't solve we're a data-driven department. And I won't say now, we have been for quite some time. And often, as you well know, we make our decisions on both policy, analysis, budgeting, priorities based on data. We say we're now the capital of hit and runs. We have been for the last 10, 15 years. Maybe that information hasn't been readily available and hasn't been CompStatted. We don't know. We'd like to get to the heart of that so we can actually start making some informed decisions. Yep. We can start prioritizing some other budget allocations. We can start figuring out if there are geographic locations, what kinds of patterns are we seeing out there. We want to have some more. We have the responsibility as the policymakers of the city, as the Committee for Public Safety, as the City of Los Angeles, to help and work with and fund the police department and the Department of Transportation. If we don't have that responsibility, we certainly have the liability and the exposure, and I think we take that very seriously. And so we want to make and help you and work with you. I don't know how long and what kind of report you've put together to come back on this, but I'd like it to come back to committee as soon as possible so we can have as much information and actually have a deep dialogue and discussion moving forward. And it's not going to be a one-time discussion. And we are seeing every single day, more so now than ever, on the news, every day. There's rarely a day that goes by where I don't hit the pillow at night and turn on the news, or wake up in the morning and turn on the news and see another hit-and-run crime somewhere in the city of Los Angeles, and another victim or another family. And we've got to figure out, it appears to be more of a spike than ever, but now we're hearing numbers that may not be the case. So we really need to figure that out. And now I want to open it up to all my colleagues. Yes, Councilwoman Nuri Martinez.
Good morning. So if you have do you have a sense of geographically where most of the hit and runs are taking place? So you can break that down by council district, I assume.
Yeah, we have by our 4 bureaus. Okay. So each bureau has a traffic division, and that traffic division has the appropriate
Have you
reporting.
seen a change since the city's implemented a rewards? We've very often we issue rewards for folks who've been killed or injured in a hit and run. Have you seen any type of decrease ever since we started to implement?
I have not seen a decrease whatsoever.
So you don't think it's making an impact?
No.
No.
The other question I had is, where are what seems to be the trends? Are the most hit and runs happening in the morning, at crosswalks, people are jaywalking? What seems to be the trend or the pattern here? Is it morning, late afternoon, evening, rush hour?
There's not. We don't have a trend.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Just trying to figure out about resources too,
Sure.
and sort of how do we then, if people obviously have a disregard for human life, I mean, after you hit an animal, God forbid a human being too, people just sort of leave the scene of the crime. I don't know how you have the heart to do that, but at the same time, what are we seeing in terms of trends so that we can also allocate the types of resources, particularly around the hotspots?
I can tell you one thing that we've seen in those of us that have been doing traffic collision investigation enforcement for our entire careers, as we have been. I know, like when Councilmember Buscaino was working in the streets with us in South Bureau, the big trend maybe 15 years ago was DUI enforcement. We've been very successful with DUI enforcement and the larger fines and jail time. A lot of us really believe that our success in the DUI enforcement has also been one of the primary causes of the hit and run increase. If you think about it, you drive down the 110 freeway, the 710 freeway, and you see these signs that say you just blew $10,000. and you're a little tipsy and you drive home and you run into someone's fender, and that comes back in your head, wow, if I stay, it's going to cost me $10,000 because I'm going to get arrested for DUI. But if I leave and they catch me in the morning, I'm going to get a misdemeanor slap on the hand. So we really believe that the answer to addressing the hit and run problem is making the hit and run punishment more even with the DUI punishment. And that's wherein that we feel that we're going to solve the hit and run problem.
Thank you.
Just had one question. In terms of the statistics and the data gathering, how is LAPD sharing info with LADOT? I know a few years ago, and I'm hoping this has changed, LAPD used to share the info with the state, and then DOT would get the info about 2 years later from the statewide integrated traffic record system.
We are working with DOT. As a matter of fact, we just have a project now that's coming before transportation. And so our open dialogue, our constant communication, and especially with the Vision Zero that has just been announced. So you'll see a greater partnership, even to the point where we are LAPD in partnership with DOT for the engineering aspect of it, which is very important. That we're going out and looking at directed enforcement activity for high-risk intersections. And through our partnership, that we have an engineer that we can talk with, can look at the timing of the lighting, look at whether or not the signage is correct. So that partnership is there, and it's increasing as these projects come about.
Yeah, it's really important that it be as real-time as possible, particularly as we're doing Vision Zero stuff, and we're going to be targeting enforcement where there's problems. But I know, year and a half ago, some folks in Pacific Palisades were looking at a parklet, and DOT ran their numbers and said, yeah, no problem. And then later, a community member who wasn't wild about the idea checked and found data from LAPD that DOT didn't have. So it's really important that everybody's working from the same info sheet.
And I believe I'm not going to say we fixed that problem, but being aware that our IT people have, I don't want to say something as simple as they flipped a different switch, but to be able to make that accessible, that database accessible to DOT for when we report it. We've been working on that.
Probably was a switch.
A switch that simple? Okay.
Well, I'll look forward to exploring that a little bit more in Transportation Committee. I'd like to get both departments at the table at the same time and make sure everybody's literally on the same page. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report, Captain and Detective Walton. Back to Ms. Nuri Martinez's comment on the standing reward. I'm really pleased to lead that with my partner here, Mr. Englander. I think in order for the standing reward, I think what's important for the standing reward on these hit-and-run crimes to be successful, and a critical piece of that is public education. We are seeing almost on a daily basis these news reports from various agencies, news agencies, that report on these hit-and-run crimes in the city, yet they fail to mention in their report that there is a standing reward on these types of hit-and-run crimes, from property crime all the way to fatalities. So I asked, in moving forward, I know this is, we'll get some more feedback on these numbers, to partner with our media relations across the street and to continue to promote that the city does offer a standing reward, and so our partners in the media can report that in hopes that some folks can come forward. Thank you.
All right. I also want to thank you for your work on this, and I look forward to seeing the written report and seeing those numbers and statistics. According to your numbers from 2014, there are 61 hit and runs every day in Los Angeles, a little over 61 incidents every day.
Every half hour.
Every half hour. So there is a huge difference between someone zooming down a street and knocking off someone's rearview mirror, right, and just saying, okay, I didn't hurt anyone, I'm going to keep going and maybe I won't get caught, to striking someone, injuring them, or killing them and leaving. And so I love greater enforcement. I love the idea of turning it into a felony as far as leaving the scene of a crime, a hit-and-run crime, and the impounding of vehicles as well. I think that if we do take this as the serious epidemic that it is, then we need to have some sort of punishment that fits the crime and the magnitude of this, because it really is, 61 a day. How many do involve a human being? It'll be very interesting to see. And we should rename Vision Zero Tolerance, I think, because we shouldn't have any tolerance for this kind of epidemic that we're facing.
I like that, since Vision Zero didn't really make much sense as a name anyway.
Vision Zero Tolerance,
I mean,
that's where I'm going with this. But anyway, thank you, and I look forward to being able to do more to really discourage this sense of lawlessness that goes along with hit-and-run crimes, because that's really what it is. People just feeling like they'll get away with doing something really horrible if they can. And we've got to take away that feeling that they have. And I think that this report and the work we do will go a long way to that. So thank you.
With that,
yes.
With the assistance of this committee, the hit-and-run notification program, it's begun.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, and so when you see that information coming out and you know that it's being sent out to a lot of eyes on the street, if you will, but you just gave me a great idea to put a notice that there is a standing reward in that blast. And I think that would even perk up someone's interest. And
Right.
once again, that is information where we have a potential lead of a vehicle that we're putting that out.
We should put it out there, every press release, every time we share it with the media, we should put that out there.
Yes.
As we do with, absolutely. Okay, good idea with that. With that, I'm going to ask for the written report to come back so we can actually do a discussion. But before we do that, let me ask you this. It sounds like we want as much, and if not more, information than you may already have in the report. How much time to think about as much as you can possibly put in there, because I think we really do want to spend, and I'm going to make sure that when we schedule this and it comes back, it's a light agenda so we can actually spend time, not 5 or 10 minutes, but going through. This is one of the biggest issues we're dealing with. It's one of the crimes that is happening geographically everywhere, every day, every half hour, and it's a devastating crime. So with that,
Mr. Chair, one last thing.
yeah.
Does the report talk about the age group?
No.
Like, is it kids,
The report.
elderly?
Yeah, the report that we had completed was very specific as to just the numbers for the last 10 years.
Right,
there was
right,
no
right.
analysis to what.
that's all we asked for at the time.
Right.
So we're asking for
Right, so now
much more than that. What time frame? First of all, you're involved in a lot of different things every single day.
Thank you for noticing.
And one of the right before you stepped up here, we just said that the department is completely short-staffed with civilians to do these kinds of analysis, and so we're taking literally boots off the ground. We're taking lieutenants and others to go do reports for us. It's important for us to make decisions and focus on it, but it also takes you away from your day-to-day. I get that. I want to put that out there. So when I say what kind of time frame to come back, obviously it's not 24 hours or even possibly the next meeting, because we want to really have the analysis and we want to make sure it's accurate. You can tell us offline or now what you think, or we can work through and figure it out.
If I can have 30 days, because that gives me one deployment period, that I can at least put some good eyes on this, and then let me have the ability to conduct my own analysis once the officers.
And also, to make sure it's accurate, because we know it's going to be a very public document, and so we want to make sure the accuracy and transparency is there as well. So that'd be great. We'd really appreciate that. Look forward to working with you on this. Okay.
Thank you. Very good.
Colleagues, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and schedule that to come back here with a full written analysis in 30 days. That'll be the order. Great, thank you so much. We have two other items, no cards on those items either. 21 and 22, I believe we can take those together, colleagues. 21 is simply asking and requesting the city attorney to draft an ordinance that would allow for the impounding, possible seizure, auctioning, and or destroying of vehicles involved in hit-and-run crimes that cause either injury or property damage. And so the discussion points would be, first of all, under what circumstances does LAPD impound vehicles currently now that are involved in hit-and-run crimes? But what I'm asking for is not so much the discussion now, as much as we're requesting the city attorney to draft the ordinance, and then the ordinance would be used for discussion purposes. The ordinance would simply, I wouldn't be asking that we vote on the ordinance until we bring it to committee, have the opportunity to vet it and look at it. What does it mean? I don't even anticipate that this ordinance would never be waived out of committee. This is something that we really need to do a discussion on. And so I'll be asking for your aye vote on that, but I want to open up to questions by my colleagues first.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, because I had a similar ask in terms of impounding vehicles, but it pertains more to the prostitution issue in my district. And I thought there was a case that we had lost on appeal on the forfeiture issue when it comes to seizing someone's vehicle. I don't know if it pertains to this same issue, because of course this car would be involved, I assume, in an actual crime.
Right.
The judge disagreed with the city in terms of us impounding the cars of John's in the case of the prostitution issue. I don't know if it's related or not, because we've been shopping around legislation in Sacramento to, again, give us additional power to be able to impound vehicles. Because I thought at the time we can't do that anymore.
So,
can someone help me out with this question?
Yeah, well, let's do this if we could. From my reading of the case and from what I was told, yes, know exactly what you're talking about. It was very specific, not saying we cannot seize vehicles. Oftentimes we'll hear from some folks, and it's my opinion that when you talk to 10 attorneys, you get often 12 different answers, because it really is how you read into it and what you look at it. Don't worry, if you talk to politicians, you get 30 different answers, and that's only talking to one, so nothing on our attorneys at all. Let me just put that out there. Having said that, I think looking at that is, in that specific case and how the vehicle was seized, and I don't want to go too far out this in public as we're talking about drafting yet another ordinance, is that something punitive before they've even been convicted, something that's been a little different then. I think we got to go into the weeds on what happened in that case, and I mean certainly we have, and the state allows us to seize and impound vehicles in certain situations. There are also ways that we wrote the ordinance that need to be updated based on the law. So I think what we need to do is really get a full analysis on that particular issue and how and what the courts decided on that case. And there probably is a possibility, from what I've heard, that we can actually fix the ordinance to allow what you're trying to accomplish as well based on the case law. So I think we need to get an opinion on doing, and maybe that is a possible closed session, if you'd like, in the future, where we can talk about that specific case and what, if anything, we need to do to update our laws to address that issue.
I just want, if there is an opportunity to address both, or perhaps this is a lot more ready to go, I'm happy to support, but I just wanted to make sure we're not duplicating efforts so that we can, I want to figure out how to accomplish my...
It's really important. I want to make sure we accomplish that goal. So what I'm going to request then is that we actually ask the city attorney to draft the ordinance for this. It'll go to council asking for that, but when it comes back as a draft ordinance, we also have a possible, if we could, closed session item with it coming back on what you're asking for. And I don't know that we need a separate motion since we're having the discussion. Let's go ahead and we'll look into the possibility of a closed session briefing from the city attorney's office on that case and how it could pertain to the ordinance. So there's a nexus, the ordinance on what we're talking about on this, and have that closed session discussion on what that all means. Does that make sense? Because I want to make sure we get into the details of what you're looking at.
I guess I really need guidance from the city attorney in terms of just our policy on impounding vehicles. Because we're talking about impounding vehicles in a case of a hit and run. What I'm talking about is impounding vehicles in a prostitution bust. That when we're out there either arresting pimps or johns, that we can have the right to impound their vehicles as well. So we're talking about impounding vehicles, but on two separate types of crimes. Does that make sense?
Of course.
So
we've been talking to the city attorney's office about this very issue of impounding cars. So since it relates to your hit and run issue, I wanted to also figure out how to address.
Let's do it this way.
Impounding cars.
Are you making a motion? Are you making a motion then to ask for the city attorney to possibly come back when this ordinance, draft ordinance comes back about the greater picture?
A motion?
No, I mean, do you want to do it here and make a motion and get a second that we can then agendize that?
Sure. I move that we also ask the city attorney's office to look into impounding vehicles in cases that involve prostitution.
Second.
Okay, and a second.
Thanks.
So, okay. And we'll go ahead and make sure we capture the language to make sure that the city attorney's office has the language and what we're looking for when it comes back. So we'll vote on the matter that way. Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm starting to read sign language, so okay, I'm getting that. Okay, we'll have a little code. Okay, perfect. Then, any other questions on that? I think we've got enough opportunity to move forward. Well, then that'll be the order of this committee on that item, as amended. Okay, and then the final item we have is 22, colleagues, and 22 is relative to the annual cost associated with responding to illegal street racing activities, potential liability issues, and the like. And so I'd like to bring up and I believe we have you on that as well. Actually, we have 22 and 23, 2 items left. This was a Joe Buscaino and Mike Bonin motion.
Yes.
So I'd like to turn it over to them.
Thank you. If I can, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. This is motion was drafted. I want to thank Mr. Bonin for seconding this in response to a number of street racing advocates in my district who have called it's called for the city to locate find a location that's suitable to have legal street racing on a city street. And I just want to ask, has the city ever supported a street racing event on public streets or public property?
I don't believe the city has ever supported that type of activity on a public thoroughfare, nor do I think the state would agree.
Okay.
I think we'd have a lot of difficulty with the term of public thoroughfare.
Okay. Because one would argue that the Long Beach Grand Prix allows, obviously, racing on city streets. That's sanctioned and it's secured. And this is what I'm hearing from these advocates who are calling for legal street racing in the city of Los Angeles. How would you respond to that, Captain?
Well, that's a special event, and so the special event would go through the vetting process, the insurance process, looking at risk management issues. Are we talking about professional drivers?
Right.
Are we talking about just me? I'm not a professional driver, but I drive a car, and I want to go street race.
Right.
What is that risk management factor?
Right.
I think, and I'm not trying to offer an opinion, but looking at the designation of a special permit to close a city street for that type of activity comes with vetting.
Right.
And it all depends on whether or not that special permit, through the appropriate vetting process, will be granted. Because not all special permits are,
Sure.
they're granted as first submitted. They are modified accordingly.
I remember years ago we held a race here in downtown Los Angeles that was sanctioned, and it was, I believe, one of the Red Bull events. Let me ask you maybe more of a city attorney question. What would be necessary to mitigate the city's risk in holding such an event?
A sanctioned event? We'd have to see the permit. We'd have to have an organizer. We'd have to have the city attorney look at the insurance riders. Is the city going to pay for the insurance? Or are we going to require the organizer of that event to pay and have that? And please, if the city attorney can help me with the way the insurance riders work, I don't believe the city, unless the city is calling for it, would open an insurance rider.
Okay, so what the advocates are asking for is, I'm assuming they want to be held to the same standard as a Red Bull Rallycross event that we're going to hold down at the harbor, down at Outer Harbor on the 12th and 13th of this month. Okay.
Yeah, my only suggestion right now, just hearing this, would be to advise them to seek a special events permit. Okay. And let it go through the appropriate process and vetting. And
because years ago, I remember Big Willie held a number of these races, these street races on Terminal Island on port property, and the group, these advocates were looking at Terminal Island to bring back street racing on Terminal Island. Obviously, that's sacred property for the port, and the port tells us that, their main goal is to move goods, and the location that they used back in the day is being used today to move cargo. So I really appreciate the input and the feedback on this item, Mr. Chair, and ask that we move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so
How are we moving forward on this? You're just asking to go.
We're just going to get a
through how
report.
you-
Yeah, just to get a report back.
Okay.
Because in recent news, I mean, all right, there's been an increase in these hit and runs, fatalities involving street racing, and I believe we'd like to get these costs that are associated with the response of police and even in fire department that are continuing to respond to these types of these types of activities throughout the city of Los Angeles. And also look at the potential liability issues associated with holding these city-sanctioned events throughout the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So,
On these cars, right? When we catch you, when there's illegal racing, we can impound these. Okay.
and this is actually the next item on 23, the final item that we're going to talk about. And so with that, we'll go ahead and approve that item as recommended by Mr. Buscaino to report back on that feasibility and costs. And so we'll move that to the full city council. And then the final item, we're going to, I believe Zaki Mustafa is here as well to sit at the table. Zaki, I see you back there. All right, come on up as well to join, if you would, this conversation, because it does include directing and asking for the Department of Transportation to report on mitigations on this as well, to be implemented discouraging illegal racing. But one of the big underlying parts of this is the illegal street racing, exhibitions of speed, and reckless driving motion. And with that, this was my motion to ask not only the Los Angeles Police Department to report on the procedures need to begin impounding these vehicles, but also requesting the city attorney, and this is the big part of this, to draft an ordinance that would allow the Los Angeles Police Department to seize and auction and possibly destroy cars that are involved in street racing, exhibitions of speed, or reckless driving. The important part of this, that lead to great bodily injury or death. So we're not talking about simply street racing, exhibitions of speed, and reckless driving. We're talking about if doing so leads to great bodily injury or death. We're not talking about seizing people's vehicles because they sideswiped and took off a mirror. We're talking about specifically those horrible crimes. And so if we can just address that and walk through, the motion as it speaks, and that would be great.
Well, Scott, I'll let you.
Yeah, it's to kind of, I'll go through both of those. For the hit and run aspect of impounding a vehicle, the section that we use in the vehicle code is 21655.5, which is the evidence section for an impound.
Mm-hmm.
That's, frankly, I think when you see the further report, you'll realize, I'm sorry to say, probably you'll be disappointed, very few hit and run crimes are solved. The solve rate is very low.
Right.
Like in the teens.
Yeah.
Okay, the ones we do solve are normally when we catch the car.
Roughly 11%.
Yeah, so when we catch it depends on the division.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we catch the car, that's when we usually catch the suspect. Generally, when we get a hit and run car, one of two things happens. Either the person abandons the vehicle, says they had that wasn't them, someone took the car, and they never get the vehicle back.
Mm-hmm.
Or they want the vehicle back and they confess to the crime, and those are the ones that we usually solve, having investigated hundreds of hit and runs myself. So really, I don't know about...
says that my car was stolen.
Yeah, right. Or someone took my car, my brother borrowed it, and he ran away. So the seizure of those vehicles, it's going to be a very low number of vehicles that you're looking at. As far as the street racing aspect, we were just talking to the Detective CEO of Valley Traffic Division, Billy Bustos, so I'm sure you're aware of up there in the Valley.
Yeah.
Valley had a big problem with street racers, and they actually developed a task force to go out and combat this crime in the Valley. Well, we just found out yesterday that because so many Valley traffic officers are being reassigned to crime details, they've had to abandon the street racer enforcement. So,
That makes sense. That would explain Lancashire, Tuxford, and San Fernando.
right,
Yeah.
they would come out and they would have these kid-organized or, street...
We have no traffic officers virtually out there at all right now because of this issue. We're not enforcing a lot of the traffic laws because a lot of the speed laws haven't been, and the streets haven't been calibrated and kept up
Well,
with.
yeah.
And we can't then use radar. We've got some serious issues and deficiencies where some of the department folks, if you will, for whatever and various reasons, are not keeping up with our requirements for enforcement. So simply because we can't do it as well and we have other issues percolating, the departments are reshifting resources rather than addressing the issues. I've already met with the general manager of Department of Transportation, and she is very focused on updating, and we had a terrific meeting. The compliance with the speed trap laws, and we'll be working for those calibration efforts. I've already met with and talked to the chairman of that committee of transportation as well, and what we're going to be doing with that, and so we're very focused on that. As it relates to this, if I can just bring it back home, and I know we're got to get down to council as well. This really relates to the illegal street racing exhibitions of speed and reckless driving. I know a lot of the things we're doing with Vision Zero and DOT and engineering and how we're going to be looking at some of these streets, particularly as it relates to street racing and some of the things we can try beyond speed humps and bumps. We're working on, and so I want to thank you, Zaki, for all your work with that. I'd like to ask the city attorney to draft an ordinance, though, to come back, again, with the seizure, auction, and possible destruction of the cars that are involved in these type of incidents that lead to great bodily injury or death. Really narrowed in on those. If you guys are okay with that, I'd like to ask for that draft to come back from the city attorney's office so we can have that discussion, but that has to go to the full city council in order to do so, and I'd ask that the committee support that. Okay. So that'll be the order without objection, and so we'll send this to the full city council that way.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
put on the items that are...
Yes, I was going to go ahead and open that up. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you very much. So we'll ask Mr. Clerk if you can please let us know what items we reconsideration for a full vote.
Items number 1 through 19 for reconsideration now that all the members are present.
Okay, so 1 through 19 for reconsideration. Without objection, that'll be the order, and it is unanimous. Great. So full committee consent on those items. And I believe that we've already heard all the cards and all the items, general public comment as well. That concludes the agenda, and we are adjourned. Be safe. Thank you.